Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing to take a look at the next week's slate, heading down to the ACC as Georgia Tech heads on the road to play Clemson. And this is a Clemson team that I get not the standard that Clemson fans expect in 2023. 5-4 record. That being said, you take a look at this Clemson team, it is still one of the better teams in all of college football. And you could say, how can you possibly say that when they're sitting there at 5-4? Look at all four of their losses. Every single loss, Florida State, Miami, NC State, Duke in the beginning of the season, they outgained their opponents in all four of those games. This Clemson team, yes, has some problems, especially on the offensive side of the ball, but this is still a really good team that has had some tough losses. And you look at Georgia Tech, an extremely explosive offense. If you're a Georgia Tech fan, this team is not necessarily as talented as it's going to be, but what you can say is this team plays extremely hard for Brent Key. And I think Coach Brent Key has this thing going in the right direction in a meaningful way. You give him another recruiting cycle, another transfer portal cycle. Like, this Georgia Tech program is going in the right direction. Now, before we get into this matchup, just want to say thank you to you guys. The amount of support for all of these game breakdowns, it truly does mean a lot. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and more importantly, best part about doing this, hearing from you guys in the comment section. Picks, predictions, keys to the game, throw them in there. We'll chop it up. Without further ado, let's start with this Clemson offense going up against the Georgia Tech defense. That is the portion of the football that Georgia Tech struggles with, right? You take a look at Georgia Tech's defense, 32.3 points per game. That's 108th in the country, 6.4 yards per play allowed. That's 125th. Do I think this Georgia Tech defense will get better in the next couple of years? Absolutely, as they continue kind of up in that unit. But as of right now, it's still a weakness for Georgia Tech. You look at their rushing defense, 5.3 yards per carry. That's 125th. And then the passing game, 8.3 yards per pass. That's 116th. Struggle to stop the run, I think, is one of the bigger problems Georgia Tech has. And if you're Clemson, you got something with Phil Moffitt. Obviously, I think Will Shipley, a phenomenal back. Sounds like he'll be healthy for this game. But I would expect a heavy dose out of Phil Moffitt. What is the best thing you can do for a young quarterback in Cade Klubnik, who is just clearly struggling with the confidence? Give him a strong run game. I mean, Phil Moffitt, 36 carries for $186, 5.5 yards per carry almost, 2 touchdowns against a Notre Dame defense. That is really good. I think you found something in this run game. I watched back the film. That Clemson offensive line, by far the best they looked, especially in the run blocking department, that you've seen all year. If you're Clemson going into this game, again, going back to getting some confidence back in this offense, go to what's been working. And that's been the run game. Whether it's Phil Moffitt, whether it's Will Shipley, if that offensive line is as physical as we saw against Notre Dame, this is a Clemson team that can have some success running the football. And I think that'll open it up a little bit for the passing lanes, right? Cade Klubnik obviously struggling. The biggest critique I have with this Clemson offense is it's just very, in the passing attack, it just lacks any sort of explosiveness. Right? This is a team that's 6.1 yards per pass attempt. That is 112th in the country. You can make the argument that Dabo needs to address the wide receiver talent in the transfer portal. I totally understand that. We'll probably talk about that in the offseason. Cade Klubnik struggling with his confidence. I think the wide receiver room in general struggling with their confidence. The best thing you can do, get this run game going, make these safeties come into the box and see if you can hit some explosive plays in the passing attack. Again, I still am not out on Cade Klubnik. I know he's struggled. It's a new offensive coordinator. He's thrown to a lot of young wide receivers. I still think Cade Klubnik has it. I think helping and giving him a run game could be absolutely massive in this matchup. Now, flipping sides, this is a Clemson defense that needs more respect, right? You look at the points per game, 21.8 points per game allowed. That's 33rd in the country. That's not eye-popping numbers. The offense has put them in horrible spots consistently with the turnovers. But you look at this Clemson defense from a down-to-down basis, it's still a top 10 unit. And you look at the defensive line, the backers, and the secondary littered with NFL dudes. I mean, they're only allowing 4.5 yards per play. That's 11th best in the country. You look at this defensive line, Ruocco, Peter Woods. I thought K-Park played extremely well. TJ Parker, the true freshman, Xavier Thomas, Tyler Davis. I just shouted out 6 names. All of those guys will be playing in the NFL, whether it's in 12 months or whether it's in 2 years in TJ Parker and Peter Woods' case. You look at the linebackers, 2 of the best in the country in Jeremiah Trotter, Barrett Carter. In the secondary, Nate Wiggins looks like one of the best cornerbacks in the country. This is a Clemson defense that is loaded with talent. They fly around and make plays, and showed on Saturday against Notre Dame. They can go out and win Clemson football games. This defense gets a little disrespected from the box score watchers in terms of how many points per game are they allowing. When you turn on the film, when you look at the deeper underlying numbers, this Clemson defense is still absolutely phenomenal. Now, Georgia Tech's offense, extremely explosive. And I can't stress how important it is for what Brent Key and this offensive staff are doing and how they're using Haynes King. Haynes King has had this talent at Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher just wanted him to be a quarterback that he wasn't. Letting Haynes King use his legs has been massive for this Georgia Tech team. You take a look at their offense as a whole, 31.4 points per game, top 30 in the country, 6.5 yards per play. That's 13th in the country. This team, explosive. Yes, they've struggled with some turnovers, but they can move the ball. They run the ball extremely well, 5.5 yards per carry. That's number 9 in the country. And again, I think it goes back to Haynes King. When you have, Haynes King's a guy that has a track background, 10-second stuff in the 100 meter. This dude absolutely flies and is a phenomenal athlete. Letting him be an athlete and use his legs has been massive for this Georgia Tech team. And it's opened up stuff for like Jamal Haynes, who's averaging 5.8 yards per carry. This Georgia Tech team, when they want to run the football, has a ton of speed. And I think that gives a lot of defenses problems. Now, how do they match up against Clemson? I think Clemson's got some really good linebackers who can play in space. I'm really interested to see what Georgia Tech can do in terms of getting those playmakers in space and having them make some Clemson defenders miss, because that's hard to do against this Clemson team. And then in the passing attack, Haynes King's been slinging it. Yes, turnovers have been a problem, 10 interceptions on the year, but 22 touchdowns. Eric Singleton, true freshman, has been absolutely sensational for Georgia Tech. And I think that kind of speaks to what you're excited about for the Brent Pry era, or Coach Brent Key era, excuse me. When you're looking at this Georgia Tech team, I was like, Brent Pry does not sound right. Coach Key, you look at what he's doing on the recruiting trail. He's getting guys that maybe were a little overlooked by some of the other programs, Georgia, Alabama, getting them in the program. A guy like Eric Singleton has been phenomenal. So you look at this Georgia Tech offense, it's been one of the better groups in the country, going up against one of the better units in the country for the Clemson Tigers. This is going to be a really good matchup. Now, getting to the pick here, numbers been bouncing around a little bit. At Clemson, 14.5-point favorites. My way of looking at this, I really do like this Clemson team. I think people are really close, and I picked against Clemson last week against Notre Dame. When you look at the numbers, this Clemson team from a power ranking standpoint is still one of the better group teams, I think, in the entire country. This Georgia Tech team can score points. 14.5 points is a lot to lay for a Clemson offense that just hasn't been great. So I'm going to take Clemson to win this game because I think this defense is good enough to win a lot of football games, especially at home. I think Georgia Tech can keep this close. They hit some explosive plays both in the pass and the run game. 14.5 points. Georgia Tech's good. There's a reason this team is 4-2 in conference play, 5-4 on the year. They've been a little bit of a roller coaster, but at their high, when they're playing good football, and they can go beat teams like North Carolina. Really excited for this matchup. I'll take Georgia Tech to cover the number. Clemson to win at home. Really excited for this one. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. I think two teams in the ACC that this would be massive wins for both of these programs. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.